Hey, good day, everybody. This is Emerson Hyndman, and welcome to another edition of the Sports Inquirer Show. We are broadcasting live from Atlanta on August 21st, 2020. Hope all is well with you out in the world today. On today's broadcast, we're going to discuss Atlanta United's upcoming match against Nashville SC on August 22nd. We have some good audio from Brad Guzan, Pity Martinez, interim manager Stephen Glass, and others. So make sure you stick around for that. We also are going to discuss the NBA playoffs and the draft lottery, which took place last night on the 20th, in the Backdoor Cut portion of our show. And we have some content from Travis Schlenk, the general manager of the Atlanta Hawks. And finally, we'll go into miscellaneous department where we'll touch on baseball and other topics in the world of sports and beyond. But as always, we want to follow everything that we're doing. Head to sportsinquirer.net, premier site for news and notes in the world of sports. You can also head to our social media platforms, starting with Twitter and Instagram on the Sports Inquirer. That's all one word. You do a search on those pages, you'll see us, and you can subscribe to us on there, or like us, or follow us. We would greatly appreciate it. Also on Facebook, you go to either one of our pages, the Sports Inquirer or Sports Inquirer. One of those will be able to, you'll get all of our content there as well. And you can also subscribe to us as well on our website itself. It's a WordPress site, so when you see our page, you can follow it. I follow several pages myself, and whenever there's new content on those pages, I get an update or I get a message. So that is a really good way to keep up with all of the stuff that we're doing. Now, if you want to subscribe to the audio content exclusively, there's great platforms for that as well. You can go to our YouTube, SoundCloud, Spotify, Google Podcast, or iTunes pages. Any one of those, you can head to them, go to the Sports Inquirer. We have a page on each of those sites. You can subscribe there and listen to us, and that is a great way to listen to us on all of your digital platforms, whether it's, I go there for different ways. I have my laptop, I have my phone, I won't say an iPad, but it's a tablet. That's the proper word. I listen to content on all three of those. So make sure that you subscribe to us on all those platforms, and that'll be a great way to keep up with things that are going on in the world. For me personally, it's a broken record once again. Staying in the Metro Atlanta area, relaxing, trying to get some work done outside of this project, but staying healthy, staying safe, Lord willing, or I guess Lord blessings. My family's been doing pretty well through this process, and that's a very good thing, and should not be taken for granted through everything. But it's been really just staying home, only going to a handful of spots. Things have opened up a little bit more. Able to go to the park and able to go to the store or the gym and some of those things. Our movie theaters open. I haven't done a movie theater yet, but those opened up within the past, I guess, week or so. I have Netflix. So that's how I watch. We talked about on our last show. That's my viewing habits as far as movies and television shows. A lot of Netflix going on, but also a lot of basketball and hockey, and we'll touch on all that throughout the show. But it's not a good time to be quarantined or self-isolation or trying to practice social distancing. But imagine trying to do this in the 60s or the 70s, or when I was born in the 80s, and the lack of technology as far as phone calls, as far as internet. Really, internet's the biggest thing, or cable television. You can really live an isolated life, lead a secluded life much easier than those days. I go back to times where I'm fortunate, and I like the age that I'm at, because I can remember when there was less technology, so I can appreciate the technology we have now. I do remember not having a home computer and having to use a typewriter to type articles, but type homework assignments. I remember not having cable, having to stick with the basic cable, and that's why to this day, and I was watching the Champions League. The Champions League in the United States has been a big issue with and this ties into the soccer. That'll be a good transition. We used to have it on. We've had it on ESPN. We've had it on Fox Sports. The past few years, it was on, or for that past year, it was on Bleacher Report, which has a tie to TNT and TBS, which are cable stations here in the United States. Well, that deal is up, and now they've moved on to NBC Sport, not NBC, CBS Sports, which does not have a lot of distribution as far as cable goes. So I'm not able to watch it really on TV, the English broadcast. And you could go on, they have an app, and then you could go online, but there's a charge for that. It's a lot of stuff going on. But the loophole is that we have Univision and Telemundo for, I think it's Univision, as far as the matches go. So I am able to watch the matches in Spanish. Now, my Spanish is poquito, my español. I know I'm not conversational, but I can pick up a decent amount of words just over the years. Having friends that that speak Spanish and taking Spanish and in high school and things like that, and honestly covering Atlanta United, you hear so much Spanish spoken with the players and adjusting the great translator for the team for with communications. So you hear a lot of Spanish, so you start picking up on words and figuring out. That's not conversational, but I'm able to watch a Spanish match and kind of keep up with a match in Spanish, I should say, and keep up with it. And sports is a great equalizer. I mean, you see the ball hit or you see the sports activity. You can really watch it in mute, honestly. But the point is that's just great an example of having access to a lot of things that were not available as much in the 80s. And actually, it does go back to the 80s. We're rambling a little bit, so it's a really free-flowing show today. What I would do before having cable and before the TV contracts were a lot better for English broadcast of soccer, I would watch it on Telemundo and on Univision. And there were points, even the World Cup. Well, '94, it was pretty good, but even in '98 or 2002, I remember the time 2002, in fact, or 2006. It was the year 2006, or 2008. It was one of the World Cups. I did not have cable, and you'd figure, wow, okay, not having cable World Cup. I think it was broadcast on ESPN or Fox at that time. That's a bad thing. No, I just watched the Spanish broadcast of it for free, and because that's a free channel. I had no problems with it at all. I was able to keep up with everything and see all the players, and it was all good. Going back full circle, though, to wrap up this portion of the show before we get to the Atlanta United, it's an easier time right now to be isolated and to have availability of just resources. I've done the Zoom calls with all in the media outlets, and that's going to change. Now the bad part is, we get a lot of video, we get a lot of interviews and things like that. We're going to start having those next week because things are settling down. I'm going to start doing some more one-on-ones instead of these Zoom calls. But we're talking to all the coaches and players on teleconferencing, and that's a big change, and so that helps availability. I've been on Skype, I've been on Zoom, all these things, just to talking to people and getting everything that we need. I could send video messages to people, and I've done that and received video messages. So it's a different time that you can kind of deal with and adjust to. We're all going through it. But the sports do go on, which has been a good thing for everybody involved. And that transitions us into Atlanta United, who return to action tomorrow on August 22nd when they host Nashville SC. Atlanta's looking to snap a 3-match losing streak, and we'll get to more details about the matchup against Nashville and that losing streak itself. But also is the debut of manager Stephen Glass on an interim basis, who replaces the departed or dismissed Frank DeBoer. Gets mutually parted ways. Right? The team and DeBoer are saying mutually parted ways, but when a manager is relieved of his duties, it's usually, rarely do you have someone just resign. It's usually pressure on both sides. But Brad Guzan, the captain of the team, discussed Frank DeBoer's leaving the team or dismissal from the team and kind of what the players' reaction and perspective was of it. So here is Guzan.
I mean, I coming off of the back of the results that we had in Orlando, I wouldn't use the word surprised by the change. The results weren't there, and whether there were more things going on or not, I'm not sure. But when you have the results that we had, and the standard that Atlanta United has set for ourselves as a club, something had to change in this world, of professional sports. whether it's the right way or the wrong way, it's easier to change one person as opposed to X amount of players.
And that was Brad Guzan discussing the departure of Frank DeBoer, and we discussed that more in the show. Just things did not work out. 3-match losing streak, especially all happening on a national level with MLS's back tournament, and they've moved on from him. Now they've moved on to interim manager Stephen Glass, who was promoted from Atlanta United 2 to the first team, and Guzan discussed the new regime and what that's meant for the team.
I don't think anything changes overnight. Nothing changes with the snap of a finger, and all of a sudden we now become, world beaters, and we're unbelievable. We know and we believe in the players and the talent that we have. What I will say is, over the last 3 weeks, the amount of work being put in from the staff, from the players, from us as a group together collectively has been tremendous. From video before trainings to little conversations during training, before training, after training, having these conversations, talking about, plays that happen in scrimmages, plays that happen in certain exercises, understanding how we're wanting to deal with certain things that happen on the field. These are all good things in my eyes. These are all conversations that need to be had, because we do have a young group. We have a young group with guys that, in certain spots don't have a lot of experience, and you need to talk about this stuff. And, you hopefully iron it out in training so that come match day, it's smooth sailing and everything goes well. But we know that that's not realistic for games in terms of everything being perfect. And so we know it's not going to be perfect, but what we're expecting as a group and as a club is to continue to progress like this. We need to make sure as players we go out and do what's being asked of us, and that is to make sure that as a group we're going like this in a positive direction.
And that was Brad Guzan discussing the new regime, and obviously a player that has been a hard target or highlighted for his minimal production or inconsistent production under Frank DeBoer is the Argentinian Pity Martinez, the midfielder that's had an inconsistent tenure with Atlanta United tied to Frank DeBoer, and he spoke with the media and discussed the differences or communication between DeBoer and Stephen Glass. So here is Pity Martinez discussing that.
No era compleja, sino que cada uno por ahí veía cosas distintas, nada más. Yo lo respetaba como técnico, yo siendo jugador y del plantel y nada más. Después por ahí él tenía ideas que por ahí no iban con la idea de juego del equipo o con alguna otra situación, pero después siempre dimos el máximo por él, por su cuerpo técnico, y bueno, son decisiones que los jugadores no toman, sino que el club tomó esa decisión, y bueno, no es lindo que se vaya un técnico, pero nada, acostumbrarse a que ya no está y dar lo mejor seguir dando lo mejor con Glass.
It wasn't complex. Everyone has their own opinions and sees different things. So, as a coach, I always respected him. As players, that we have to respect the coach. So that wasn't an issue. But the way that he saw the style of play, disagreed with kind of the views of the team at times. But the players don't take those decisions. The club makes those decisions for what's best for the future of the club, and the players, have to respect the coach. So now we're just hoping to develop that positive relationship with Glassy.
And as you can hear from Pity Martinez discussing that everyone talks about the manager, and it does come down to the players, that's true. But if you look at the team and just the numbers themselves, no goals in the past 3 matches, having losing possession through a matchup, which never happened or rarely happened under the first manager, Tata Martino, and just inconsistent play. So that's what Gonzalo Martinez, Pity, was discussing as far as the differences. And then Emerson Hyndman, another midfielder, he discussed the training under Stephen Glass and what the differences have been, or what the team is kind of focused on with his promotion. So here is Emerson Hyndman.
Positives, of the training recently. I mean, I think people feel a little bit more free, a little bit more able to express themselves a little bit more, on the ball and stuff like that. So I think not just for me personally. I mean, that's I'm finding myself a little bit higher up the pitch and being able to combine with strikers and attackers again. So it's been really good for me personally, but for I think everyone else as well. I think it's kind of opening up their games where they can just be natural and not have to think too much, and that's always a positive. I mean, I've always kind of been box to box, but I always trust myself in that area of the pitch too, to get shots away, to create things, and that's kind of where I want to see myself in the future.
And that was Emerson Hyndman discussing the new training techniques, or different techniques under Stephen Glass. And for Glass, he himself, it's his first match with the team, first time managing a first team at this level, and he discussed that with the media earlier this week.
When you drive to the stadium just for training, it feels different. Obviously, the training ground's fantastic. There's a different feel when you go. So I'm really looking forward to the game. I think we're trying to get them on the front foot again and be attacking and be dynamic and all that stuff. But you put pressure on yourself for results as well. And I think that's one of the things we try to put on the guys in the twos that came to play for us from the first team sometimes, that when you come and play for us, can you win every game? So I think as a staff right now, it's a new staff, it's a new group of players in essence, because we're using them slightly different. Can they go and win as many games as we can and keep a 100% record for as long as we can? So that's the feeling I'm going in at the weekend. There's an obvious pressure, there's an obvious scrutiny, but a lot of that comes from the workload and the demand that you put on yourself. And I think the players will respond. I'm sure they will. They've been fantastic in training. I think they're looking forward to the opportunity to play against another group of players. They're playing against each other for the last 3-4 weeks, and they've obviously come off the disappointment in Orlando. And there's a lot of pride being hurt in that dressing room, I think. So I think it's business time Saturday, and I think people like what they see.
And that was Stephen Glass discussing his preparing for his MLS debut. With the MLS's back tournament tenure ending for Atlanta United very early, matter of fact, I think their last match was the first week of August. They have been back in Atlanta training under the tutelage of Glass. So he discussed his evaluation of the players, that he's crossed paths with some of them in his time with Atlanta United too, specifically George Bello and George Campbell. So he's crossed paths with some of the players, but we discussed evaluating the entire first team and his time there now as a full-time manager there.
Your point at the end is probably a huge point as well. We're looking to win every game, so that's massively important for us. We get a chance to see the players training day in, day out. You can see which ones tail off within the training, which ones maybe go 2-3 days and then they're going to struggle, which means they might not be able to play Saturday, Wednesday, or Wednesday, Saturday. So there's a bit of management in terms of the group in that respect that's as fresh as possible. I think even within the training itself, because of having no pre-season type games, if you will, and preparation games, we've had to do it ourselves. So I think a lot of managers might go the best 11 against the next 11 as much as you can. I think there's a different way of planning and a different way of keeping everybody involved, and that's what the route that we've gone down. And I think it will serve the group better than anything as well. There'll be more players ready to help the group and play in and be aware of exactly the style of play that we're looking at.
All right, now Stephen Glass discussing evaluating the players, and he specifically broke down Pity Martinez and Ezekiel Barco. And I'm going to play this, and then I'll discuss his evaluation of those players and how he's trying to get the most out of them.
obviously I'll go back and I'll watch Pity playing forever. So I watched bits of that I didn't have to do before. I would watch the first team. I'd see them training, so I'd know what they're good at. I know what they could be better at. Every home game that we didn't have a game on the road, I would have been at. And every time the first team were on the television, I'd watch them play. So I'm well aware of what they've been doing and what they've not been doing. And then, like you say, seeing them in the environment that made people bring them to this club, because they're fantastic players. They're in the same boat as a lot of people. They're fantastic players that I think can be used slightly different to get more out of them. And they're willing to do it because they know that we're actually trying to do it to put them in the best situations. So I personally have done a little bit more homework than I would have normally done to go and watch the first team. The fact that we're actually working with them now. But I was aware of it already. But it's important that we and I especially went back and had a look at everything I can to equip myself as best as possible.
And now Stephen Glass discussing it, and he talked about going back and looking at video of Pity Martinez at River Plate and Barco as well with his time in Argentina. The advantage that Glass will have, or a benefit, and we saw this before, and not just me, we do a lot of Atlanta United 2 coverage, and so we've talked to Coach Glass plenty of times. There is a good synergy between the first team and the second team. Just to pull the curtain and show you behind it, the way things work is that teams practice at the same time, the first team and the second team. And a lot of times there's players swapping and interaction, and they share the locker room for the first team is a little bit nicer than the second team, but they still share the same building. There's a lot of interaction. You'll see Glass at a lot of the sessions, and even a lot of, he watches all the matches as a supporter of the team, as an employee, but also for evaluation purposes. So he's seen every one of the matches as much as he can. If they're home, if they're in Atlanta, he goes to every single one if the team is in town, and vice versa. So he's seen a lot of Atlanta United, the first team. So it's not like he is an outsider coming in to the situation. So I think there's some familiarity there, and that helps the cause for Atlanta. You still have a full regular season to go. I think you look at everyone looks at MLS's back tournament, in which Portland won and secured the Champions League berth. It seems like there's an assumption that the season's over, it's done. Not at all. They're trying to get as many games in as possible, maybe up to 16 or 18, and that concludes the regular season and the MLS playoffs. So there's a lot of soccer still to be played. And with that, though, in the new schedule, that does require some player rotation. Atlanta plays Nashville, Orlando, and Miami over the next 7 days. They play the Nashville on tomorrow on the 22nd, and then they turn around and play Miami that Wednesday, and Orlando on that Saturday, or maybe not. I have to look it up. But Miami and Orlando. Point is, they play 3 matches in 7 days, including 2 in the state of Florida. So Glass discussed player rotation and what that can mean for the team as far as preparing for this extensive schedule, or shortened schedule.
Yeah, I think we goes in certain formations that were hopeful, and you plan for the perfect scenario. But it's important that I think everybody has opportunities to be a big part of the group. Everybody's got opportunities to show that they should be playing, and that there's a freshness in the group, and that other teams don't know exactly how we're going to play and things like that. So it's important that we're not going to be rigid in the terms of there's going to be the same group of players every week, definitely.
And now Stephen Glass discussing the team and having to use player rotation. And whoever gets into the lineup, though, they do have to score goals. As Atlanta is looking to score its first goal in 3 matches, so not only have they had their first 3-match losing streak in franchise history, they also have not scored a goal in 3 matches for the first time as well. So those are 2 negatives that they're trying to improve on and get right. So Stephen Glass, the interim manager, discussed the team's desire to score more goals.
The biggest thing is that we come into this knowing the guys hadn't scored a goal for a few games. That there is an abundance of talent that can score and create goals in this group, and it's important that you put them in positions to do so. So I think the mindset shift of not trying to make them more forward thinking, that there is the first thought is, can we go and score? Can we beat this other team? We're not going to wait around. I believe that we've got better players than a lot of other teams, so we have to use them. They're signed to this club to play and attack and be on the front foot, and I think it's important that everybody that tunes in on Saturday night sees that.
And on top of that, let's play Brad Guzan as well. Even though he's the goalkeeper, he discussed the team's need to get back to a more aggressive style of play under Stephen Glass. So here is Brad Guzan discussing this as well.
Positive, to play forward, to attack. When you look at what Atlanta United is and what we've become over the course of X amount of few years, people think of Atlanta United as this attacking team, exciting team. That's what we want to be as players. And so now I think Glacier and his staff, they're now giving the freedom and the responsibility to the players to go in and express themselves and be forward-thinking players, be positive playing players, not being, I don't want to use the word conservative, but to be on the front foot, to play the ball forward, to have players in attacking positions, to have players that are open to pass the ball forward too. We want to get back to that. We want to get back to scoring goals. We want to get back to being exciting, to being a threat, and to making it, a scary thing when teams see that they're playing Atlanta United.
All right, and last audio that we're going to play from Atlanta United, I think it's our last audio. Got to look at my notes. It's our last audio from them, is Stephen Glass himself discussing playing in an empty stadium. We've discussed all these things going on right now with the pandemic and coronavirus and everything like that. What that means is that Atlanta United is going to play in an empty stadium over the next really month or so, or maybe for the rest of the regular season. But we do know their next 3 home matches are going to be in an empty stadium, starting with Saturday's contest on August 22nd against Nashville. So we talked to Coach Glass about that and how it affects the team's preparations and strategy.
Easier to get any messages across to the players, but I don't think I would ever say it's a benefit when the level of the supporters that we've got at this club to not play in front of them. The one thing is, like I said, the work that people have done behind the scenes for bringing that noise and making it real and making it feel like it's going to be a big home game and there is an atmosphere and there are people here that are wanting us to win. And you're representing that. So the background work that's going on is important. So I don't see it as a huge negative, but we would love, obviously, the fans to be there. Of course we would.
All right, now Stephen Glass discussing the differences or issues of playing in an empty stadium. I asked him directly, does it improve communication? And we've seen that as well. If you've been watching the matches on television, even that piped-in noise, that's more for television purposes. If you watch the ESPN broadcast, they don't use the piped-in noise. It is relatively silent on the pitch. You can hear the players communicating, the coaches talking to the players. I like hearing it because you get to hear what the people are saying. You hear a lot of Spanish and Portuguese as well. It's very interesting in that regard, and that ties in a lot to the players' nationality on the pitch. But it does improve as far as talking to the players and the players communicating and the coaches, especially in Atlanta, which holds the most, usually has the most fans home attendance-wise in the league. So that's beneficial. If you're gonna look at a positive from all of this, the communication can be better. And as far as the match itself, Atlanta won the first contest on February 29th at Nissan Stadium in Nashville. It was the first inaugural MLS match for Nashville in the contest. Ezekiel Barca and Hyndman scored a goal each in that contest. That also was the match, unfortunately, that Joseph Martinez suffered the season-ending knee injury that has him out for the rest of the 2020 campaign. Since becoming an MLS franchise themselves in 2017, Atlanta has a 4-1-1 record against expansion franchises, and they've outscored the opponents 19-5 in those contests. This will be the first home match for Atlanta since March 7th, which was a 2-1 victory against FC Cincinnati. You had goals once again from Barco and Hyndman in that contest. And so Atlanta is back on the home pitch, on the home field, and they're looking to get a win and try to stay in the top half of the Eastern Conference standings. All right, let's transition to basketball in our backdoor cut portion of our broadcast. The NBA draft lottery took place yesterday. Start with Atlanta. We'll focus on them, the local team in our media coverage. Atlanta got the 6th pick of the draft. That was the highest percentage pick that they had in the lottery. So they did not move. Technically, they moved down because they had the 4th worst record in the season and had the 4th best chances to, I guess, get the top seed or top pick. But if you looked at the numbers, the 6th seed was, or you're saying seed because I'm in playoff mode. The 6th pick was the most likely scenario. I think it was around 25% for Atlanta to get that pick. And we're ready to speak with Travis Schlenk, the general manager of the team, about Atlanta being in the lottery for another seed.
Improve. I've said in the past, we want to continue to add players, obviously through the draft, free agency, that we think fit, and we want to see the growth of our players collectively and individually. And we feel like we have a good young core of guys. Obviously, we went out and got more aggressive this past trade deadline and went out and took on some players that had money, something we haven't done in the past. So I think it's fair to say that we do want to see our group start to improve on the court as far as wins and losses go. I wouldn't necessarily say that put the pressure on them or anyone that it's playoffs or bust, but we do want to start to see our group improving on the floor for sure.
And that was Travis Schlenk discussing Atlanta being in the lottery once again. A postseason streak or postseason list streak extended another season this year for Atlanta. So when they've had a lot, they're in the middle of the rebuild, and they've been able to bring a lot of players like Trae Young and Cam Reddish and DeAndre Hunter, Kevin Huerter, all first rounders that they've been able to, and John Collins as well. All those guys have been first rounders they've picked up over the past 3 seasons. So how does that tie into the approach of the draft this year for Atlanta? We discussed that with Travis as well. So here is Travis Schlenk discussing the approach to this pick.
I said this on several occasions. Anytime you're picking this high in the draft, you've got to take the person that you think is going to be the best player. We're going to do that. We're going to, as you guys are all aware, we'll look at all our options. We've proven we're not afraid to move one direction or the other in the draft. So we'll see what options are out there for us on that front. But if we stay at 6, we're going to take the player we think is going to be the best player long term. And if we create competition with some of our other young guys because they're players in the same position, there's nothing wrong with that. That's healthy. And I've said before many times, you can never have too many good players. That's not a problem.
And I said you heard a lot of general managers speak there, and that's a fair evaluation of it. Well, let's let him discuss the draft class itself, and then we'll break down a little bit more about where Atlanta can go with it.
I think what makes this draft class difficult is a lot of the players at the top, you don't have big books on them. A lot of them, a couple of them went overseas, got hurt. One kid, left college early. And so you just don't have a lot. You weren't able to see him play a lot this year. And then obviously everything got cut short with conference tournaments. So we don't have the luxury of, going to the conference tournaments and seeing these kids, seeing how they play in the NCAA tournament. Me personally, I didn't spend a lot of time on the road earlier in the year. I was around the team more, so I was going to take advantage of the tournaments to go out and see a lot of these guys firsthand. And, I lost that ability. So, it's been a lot of video watching, but the fact that we haven't been able to sit down with these guys and bring them in here too, that also creates a challenge. So I just think everything about this draft, when you think about the way we are with the whole COVID situation, it's made it difficult.
All right, that was Travis Schlenk once again discussing the draft pick or the approach to the draft and the draft class itself. It's a wide open class, especially when you're at the 6th pick. There's not an Anthony Davis or Zion Williamson or LeBron James. I'm actually got guys that when the pick was taking place, you knew who the number one pick was going to be. I go back to the early '90s when it was Shaquille O'Neal back in his draft, where you knew it was like, this is the number one guy, this is the top pick, and LeBron James as well. That we're gonna take this guy. He's number one. There's no doubt about it. It's pretty wide open, and that's his approach to it. And we'll discuss. Well, let's wrap the lottery stuff, and then we'll talk about the September potential opportunities for Atlanta to practice. Yeah, Minnesota won the lottery, and followed by Golden State, Charlotte, and Chicago. That rounds out the top four. The conspiracy theorists have to sit back down for another year, really a few years, because those who talked with Zion Williamson last year, oh, the Knicks are going to win the lottery, put Zion in New York, the biggest market. No, he goes to New Orleans, which is arguably the smallest market or bottom five market in the NBA. Minnesota, we've seen them win. They've won the lottery several times. Drafted Andrew Wiggins. Obviously, they flipped him to Cleveland with Kevin Love and all that, but he still won the lottery then. You had Karl Anthony Towns win the pick when they won the lottery. Minnesota, maybe not the most desirable location for a top flight player. And no disrespect to Minnesotans out there, but if I'm talking conspiracy theorist a perspective, usually what they try to do is, and you can argue what they do, one of two things. They have the big market, so they want the New York, the Philly, the Chicago, the Los Angeles. They want those major markets getting some, Washington D.C. Big markets, top 5, top 10 markets to get a top player, so that the league can promote itself and build from there. I think that's antiquated. We're in 2020. You see superstars play in Oklahoma City and Portland and get just as much endorsement and love as a guy playing for the Lakers or the Knicks or Celtics, stuff like that. So that's one theory. And then the second theory is maybe if a team lost a player to a major free agency situation, let's just go with the Cavs. When LeBron James went to Miami, they were a wounded franchise. And what happens? Oh, they end up drafting number one or getting first pick, picking Kyrie Irving and having another franchise guy to go from there. I don't think that's the second part or second theory that a lot of conspiracists like to go with. I don't think that the Timberwolves are in either one of those categories, and they were able to win. Now, Golden State, if they got the top seed, that would have been interesting too. But I think the draft really comes down to maybe 3-4 players right now. You're probably looking at LaMelo Ball, yes, another Ball brother, who is a top flight guy. So you look at him, a point guard. You're looking at Wiseman, the center from Memphis. Didn't get to play too much. He had a suspension and everything like that, but he's a 7-footer top prospect. Anthony Edwards, Atlanta, Georgia product, who went to the University of Georgia for his freshman year. You're looking at him physically, 6'5", athleticism, that maybe the most athletic player in the draft, and so he's a top prospect. And there's Toppin, the forward or post player out of Dayton, that's intriguing. There is the professional who I should know the name of, but he played, I think, the Israeli. He is a top prospect as well. So we'll see what happens with all of these picks and how they go. Now, as far as for Atlanta, let's circle back to them. As far as the backdoor cut, they are looking at the prospect of practicing in September. Remember, the bubble only invited 22 teams, 22 out of 30, to play in the bubble and contend for a playoff spot or improve their playoff seeding. There are several franchises that were not even involved in this bubble that had really bad records and didn't even participate, such as the Atlanta Hawks. What the NBA has done now is that they're looking to potentially have them come to their home market and have practices for a few weeks as their off-season, I guess, deal goes. Travis Schlenk discussed that opportunity, what the team would look to do with that situation.
Group of guys together and get practice time with them is advantageous. We're in a situation where, our last game was March 11th, and we didn't have any idea when that would be. Now we know at least we have 2 weeks in September where we'll be able to conduct full practices, which is exciting. Our guys are excited about it. We were one of the teams all the way back that was pushing for the second bubble or to be able to go scrimmage. Our guys wanted to play. So we're excited about it. We wish it was more, to be completely candid with you. As I said, we wish that there was games versus other teams, but, I understand the Players Association and the league's point of view on just, putting health and safety at the forefront. So we're going to take everything we can get and run with it.
All right, now it's Travis Schlenk discussing Atlanta and the possibility of them holding practices in the month of September. And they wanted to have scrimmages with other teams as well. But the problem is with that is the bubbles works very well for the playoffs and the postseason because you have them in one environment, one city, one hub. Atlanta, say they want, I'm trying to think of another team that, say like the Knicks, another team that did not participate in the bubble, or Golden State or Minnesota, teams like that. So they did not participate in the bubble for the postseason. You want Atlanta to travel to Chicago or travel to New York, get on the plane. We've seen the struggles with baseball, and we'll touch on that later on in the show. When you have teams traveling or people traveling, that the cross section of the getting the virus is a lot higher in that regard. That's why we have travel bans or limited travel domestically and internationally. So I think what they want to do, and you can these guys aren't going to bust 5-6 hours and play some scrimmages against another team. So I think the good thing is you go to your facility, you can do some training, some practicing, and go through that type of stuff in a controlled environment. And that could be a way to at least get some activity going instead of being off from March all the way to December of this upcoming year, when the 2020-2021 campaign starts, which may not even take place until the calendar year ends, because one, the guys off season is going to be cut down significantly, and two, we don't know what's going to be going on with the current conditions right now as far as things go. The NBA may push their regular season start to January. Maybe by then, whether you want to say it's a vaccine or maybe the virus spread lessens, things like that. So you want to give yourself an opportunity to be prepared in that regard. As far as the NBA playoffs go, you saw yesterday Milwaukee beat Orlando pretty easily. The Lakers dominated their contest against Portland. Both those number one seeds in Milwaukee and Los Angeles lost their first games. We saw significant improvement from both squads in Game 2. I think they got a scare in those matchups as far as losing Game 1. Well, Orlando really doesn't match up well with Milwaukee. You look at Portland, they're intriguing because of the Lillard and McCollum combination. Carmelo Anthony has been a really good contributor for them, Nurkic as well. But here is the problem with Portland. They have been playing so hard and so intense they had to play those 8 games just to get a play-in game against Memphis to make the playoffs, and they made the playoffs with the win, and they won Game 1. So they are playing at a high level, but you have to worry about the stamina and the fatigue. And furthermore, if Anthony Davis plays like he did in Game 2 through an entire game, that's a really, really bad matchup for the Blazers against the Lakers. LeBron only scored 10 points in the contest. He didn't have to score that much or contribute much. And he contributed, but as far as on the score line, not so much, because Davis was doing his thing. Portland missed a lot of shots as well. You got to worry about that as well. Now, Damian Lillard has a dislocated left finger in his non-shooting hand. He's going to play. He's going to go. But you worry about it's not as bad as the shooting hand itself, of course. But still, ball handling, things like that could be an issue. So we'll have to see what happens with that. The rest of the playoffs, I think you're starting to see. I look at Boston. I know Gordon Hayward's out for a month with the ankle injury. But they won their first 2 games against Philadelphia. I think the Sixers are in a pickle right now. Not only this series, they're not going to win this series, but beyond this series, what are they going to do with Brent Brown, the head coach? He's been there a very long time. He's been a good soldier. He worked through the entire rebuild to trust the process and has led him to the postseason. But what has he done to take him to another level? And then you look at the squad itself. Ben Simmons being out with a knee injury, yes, that's very bad. He's arguably their best player. I say Embiid's their best player, but Simmons is right there. So Simmons being out for this postseason is very bad. But I look at that team right now with Embiid. Embiid's doing well. He's scoring a lot of points, getting rebounds. But you look at the rest of the squad. Tobias Harris, I think that was a very bad signing. He's been overrated through his entire career. But he's long-term with him. Al Horford has really dropped off his production significantly. And so his supporting cast is not very good. But I look at that series, Boston, and Tatum getting 30-plus points. He's starting to show himself. And I called him out a little bit in my last show or two ago, where I hear about Boston so much as being this premier franchise. They're talked about as being a championship contender. I want to see more from Tatum and Jaylen Brown and Kemba. And they have shown that through the first two games. So they could be a very intriguing matchup. And probably facing Toronto. The Raptors should have a pretty easy time with Brooklyn as far as that series goes. Miami's 2-0 to up 2-0 on Indiana. I'm a little bit surprised by that. I thought they'd split the first two, but we'll see what goes on there. But I think we're looking at a kind of a course of Milwaukee versus either Toronto or Boston in the conference finals. I think that's what you're going to see, and that'll be very intriguing when we go there. I think the West, I would love for the Mavs to be a fun threat, and seeing Luka Doncic and Kristaps Porzingis play together is fun as well. That'd be intriguing. But I think that the Clippers will find a way to win the series ultimately, and I think that's where we're going to see a Clippers-Lakers conference finals. The other series are interesting. Houston, without Westbrook, they found a way to look very good against Oklahoma City, and I think they'll advance in there. And Utah-Denver, that's a coin flip series as well. I think I could make an argument for either one. We saw game one, Donovan Mitchell scored 50-plus points, but Jamal Murray ultimately have a better overtime session. So the Nuggets won game one in overtime. Game two went more Utah's way, and they were able to earn a victory there. Mike Conley, he'll be back from paternity leave in game three probably, or by game four at least. So that'll be a nice boost in the backcourt for Utah. We'll see what happens there as far as that series goes. And then we're going to wrap up with the Beanball portion of our show in the miscellaneous department. Let's discuss some Major League Baseball. Off the field, we've seen the Cardinals have their struggles with the coronavirus and the Marlins. And now Philadelphia and the Mets, they had a game that was postponed today because of a Mets player and I think a staffer contracted the virus. I'll be very surprised if any baseball teams are going to be able to place the full 60-game slate that they suggested that they would do at the start of the year. For several reasons. One, the virus, and they've been very prudent about it. If a player or a staff member from a team tests positive, they postpone games and then they archive back to where the team was previously. They evaluate that team and then try to avoid the future team. So I think you have that issue going. I think you also have the reality of playing outdoor sports. I'm recording the show right now and it's raining right here in Atlanta in the middle of the afternoon. It's that time of year where it's going to be a lot of rain and a lot of weird weather around the country. Now, I know they try to do the 7-inning doubleheaders. That's a helpful thing as well, but to get 60 games in is going to be very tough. I think they're going to do the percentage, the win percentage, and I would say a team would have to play at least 50 games. Now it puts the Cardinals and the Marlins in a really bad spot as far as trying to get those 50 games in, but I think you got to at least play 80% of the schedule to be considered a postseason team. But if you look at the standings right now, the Rays and the Yankees are, and the way the playoffs are working this year, that the top two teams from each division makes it to the playoffs, and I think the two best records from the third place teams are going to be in the postseason. And I look at the American League, you can pretty much figure out who those teams are going to be. You look at the Rays and the Yankees in the East, between the Twins, Cleveland, and the White Sox in the Central, and the A's and the Astros in the West. So that's what you're looking at right now as far as the team breakdowns go, as far as the standings. And some surprise, I think this type of format or scenario, look, we're used to seeing the Rays and the Yankees in the top of the standings. The A's and the Astros have been in the postseason for the past few years, even the Twins and the Indians. But I look at the team like the White Sox, who, under normal circumstances, will probably struggle to be a postseason team, and they are finding their way in there. So that's a very good thing as far as the diversity of the league goes. And listen to our last show about Fernando Tatis. I broke that whole thing down as far as, well, I'll talk about it now if you didn't listen to the previous show. Look, the unwritten rules of baseball are very antiquated and are very useful if it's to your own benefit. I think you've seen a lot of people talking about unwritten rules. You shouldn't steal at this point. You should not take a bunt at this point, or not swing the bat at this portion of the game if it's beneficial to you, or if something's happening to you, you don't want more runs scored against you. That's where I see a lot of these unwritten rules. You try to use it for your own benefit. Tatis swinging at 3-0, swing away. It's baseball. This isn't, middle school basketball or even high school football where one team's better than the other and you're throwing pass plays up 30 in the fourth quarter. And okay, that's a little rough. These are professionals. They're grown men and women. They could play and handle it. This is what they do. And then you look at the East. Prime example, you look at the Braves. They're in first place, 14-11. The second place team by percentage are the Marlins, who are 9-9. So the Marlins have played 18 games, and the Braves have played 25 games. And the Mets, who are in third place, have played 26 games. That's where we're going to figure out a way for the Marlins to make up as many games as they can, because if they're going to finish, second in the AL East, yet play 10 games less than the third place team, that's not right. So they're going to figure out a situation to deal with that. Same thing with the Cardinals. Cardinals are 7-7. They're in second place in the Central. They've played 14 games. A third place team, and a fourth place team for that matter, are the Brewers and the Reds. Each of them have played 24 games so far this season. So the Cardinals have played 10 less games than the Brewers and the Reds, yet with a 7-7 record, they sit in second place in the Central and they'd be a playoff team. I don't think that's fair in that regard. And then you look at the West, the Dodgers 19-8, they're going to be in the World Series team out of the National League if something crazy happens. But the Padres 15-12 and the Rockies are 13-12. It's a very interesting division. The West is intriguing. So I'll keep an eye out for baseball and everything that's going on there. And I'm trying to think of any other news and notes in the world of sports or in life. I'm going through all of my notes right now. I don't think there's anything else. So we're going to conclude today's show. Thanks for listening. As always, we'll follow everything that we're doing. Head to thesportsinquirer.net, which is our top site for news and notes in the world of sports. And our social media platforms, Twitter and Instagram, Sports Inquirer, that's all one word. And then also go to us on Facebook under The Sports Inquirer. And subscribe to us on YouTube, SoundCloud, Spotify, Google Podcast, and iTunes. Until next time, good fight, good night.